None of the content on this or any episode of the Kratom Science Podcast, Kratom Science Journal Club, or on any pages of the website kratomscience.com should be considered medical claims or medical advice. This is the Kratom Science Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gallagher, blog and social media writer for kratomscience.com. Your source for all things Kratom. My guest is Dirk Netter, author of one of the first German language books on Kratom called Kratom, Ethnobotany, Application, and Culture. And he's active in the formation of a European Kratom Alliance to advocate legality and sensible policy in the European Union. Do you live in Germany now, or are you still at Phillips of Marburg?
I still live in Marburg right now, but I'm not a student anymore. I have my master's degree and working on my PhD, but I'm still here.
What are you working on your PhD in?
I'm still in the field of drug research.
Okay.
But mostly I'm working on the sociology of knowledge of drugs. So it's not Kratom anymore, but it's still in the field of drugs, yes. Drug research.
So you wrote a book about Kratom. It was like one of the first major German language books about Kratom. It's called Kratom, Ethnobotany, Application, and Culture. And I'm just curious if there's any plans for an English translation.
Same question some years after, right?
Yeah.
For the listeners, we already did a text interview some years ago.
Yeah.
I still want to do an English translation. I'm still waiting for the second edition, and I will talk to my publisher that we can make an English version happening. Unfortunately, I have no say in it, but I think it would sell good, so maybe we can manage it next year.
Great. And, I told you I would learn German, but I'm a little behind on my German. So you go through the history of Kratom, the history of botany around Kratom, the whole botany, and then there's like good tips for recipes and successful use of Kratom and everything like that. How much time did you spend researching and writing that book?
It's hard to say because I did it when I was researching for my master's thesis, which was also on Kratom. So I would say I did maybe 1 year of research and preparation and writing.
Yeah, we did a Ask Me Anything. I was reading through that too as well, just to prepare for this interview. You said originally you were influenced by Christian Ratsch and Wolf-Dieter Storl. Can you talk about them and how you're influenced by them?
I would say I'm not that influenced by Storl anymore because I'm more like a Christian Ratsch guy now.
Okay.
For any if you don't know him, he's very famous in Germany, maybe in America as well. He did the Encyclopedia of Psychoactive Substances, which is a good book. It's selling well. I mean, he's a drug researcher, mainly interested in botany and mycology, and I was always interested not only in the effects of drugs but also on the history and botany of them as well.
At Phillips University there, you founded a group. HIPF is the abbreviation in German, but it's the Student Association for Interdisciplinary Psychedelic Research. Is that association still going on, or are they still having activities?
Yes, it's still going on.
Great.
We had a meeting a couple of days ago. I'm not as involved anymore as I was before. I founded it, but I gave the leadership to my friend who is still a student. I'm not anymore, as I said. Mm-hmm. The coronavirus pandemic made it very hard to make meetings and stuff, but we transitioned to online meetings, and we are planning to do some lectures via Discord. Yeah, that's what we're / they are doing right now.
Let's get into the botany of kratom, because there's not a lot you can find with Googling. There's a lot of stuff on kratom that's still in books that haven't been digitized. You mentioned Korthel's diaries. In our former interview, you said, one of the chapters in your book is about the discovery of kratom by the first European explorers, and you use some of the diaries of Peter Korthels, the guy who discovered kratom. He was a Dutch botanist. What can you tell us about Peter Korthels? What was his earliest discovery of kratom, and what were his impressions?
First of all, Korthel's diary. I think the diary itself is not that interesting for those interested purely in kratom, I'm afraid. But it gave me a lot of background knowledge that helped me with further research. Korthels was a very, very good botanist. He laid the groundwork for very, very much research on botany. His methods were very, very good for that time. If anybody's interested, there's a good paper on it by Martin Manse. You can find it on the internet. It's called "Knowledge is Power: The Versatile Expeditions of Peter Willem Korthels." That's just a preface for what I'm about to say. To understand who Korthels was is to understand the time. The history of kratom is more or less a colonial history. Mm-hmm. Because until 1949, the Netherlands had control over a large part of the Malay archipelago called Dutch India, mm-hmm. which very roughly covered the area of present-day Indonesia. Whereas the British ruled the present-day territories of Myanmar, formerly Burma, and Malaysia, then called British Malaya, among others. The island of Borneo was dominated by the Netherlands in the south, while the north was claimed by the British. It is therefore hardly surprising that first Dutch and British researchers discovered kratom. These colonial powers were not only interested in mineral resources, but also in exploring and mapping the local fauna and flora in order to develop possible new products. Mm-hmm. One of these organizations established was the Commission for Natural Sciences in Dutch India, which Korthels was a part of. And in 1836, the traditional use of kratom by the indigenous Malay population was reported for the first time. At that time, and this is important, kratom was known by the name biak, or biak, I guess in English.
Yeah.
The Latin species term was not yet assigned at that time. That's important to keep in mind. It was not until 1839 that Korthels established the genus Mitragena and the species Speciosa. He did, at that time, not provide a botanical description for this species, which is usually formally considered a necessary criterion to establish a new plant species. Mm-hmm. So who was this man? He was born in 1807 in Amsterdam and died in Haarlem in 1892. He was a botanist and a field researcher, and he worked extensively in the herbarium in Leiden. It was a very, very important herbarium at the time. As a member of the commission, as I said, he made several research trips to the archipelago between 1831 and 1837. In the course of these voyages, he made beside Mitragena speciosa, other important botanical discoveries and brought a considerable collection of seeds, fruits, and plants back to the Netherlands. So not just kratom alone. The invention, as I call it, of kratom was quite a bit confusing. In 1849, he transferred the Mitragena speciosa to one other genus called Stephagenin, and then renamed it to several other names, and other authors renamed it. At last, the English naturalist George Darby Haviland renamed it back to Mitragena speciosa, which we call it today. This was in 1897. Another guy called Edward Morrell Holmes, he identified this mysterious biak as Mitragena speciosa in 1895. So at that time, that was the first time that it was clear that biak and Mitragena speciosa are one plant. You can see one plant, but taxonomy was not clear at the time. So I found that quite interesting.
Did they name it mitragina? I've read that it's named because the shape of the leaf looks like a bishop's mitre, like a bishop's hat. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, that's what I read as well. I don't think it looks like this hat, but yes, that's what I read.
And do you know the term biak? And I've heard that. And was this in present day Indonesia where they called it that, or was it more in like Malaysia and Thailand?
Yes, as far as I know, biak or biak as well as kitum or kutum was a Malaysian term.
So he worked for the Dutch East India Company. That's who funded his expeditions.
Yes.
Present-day Indonesia was called the Dutch East Indies back then, where the purpose of his expeditions is basically to see maybe like what the company could exploit to buy and sell, maybe like new plants or new medicines, or were these funded just purely for scientific discovery?
No, they had a clear purpose in mind. They wanted to find products to sell.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I figured.
It's not just for scientific curiosity.
We hear a lot about these East India companies. There's a British one. There's a Dutch one. Did they start originally? They imported spices into Western Europe. Is that basically what they did?
That's one thing that they did.
Okay.
Yes, but it was not just about products. It was also about knowledge. As I said, like mapping the area and just gaining control over it.
You used some of his diaries. Are these available anywhere online or digitally? Or did you have to really dig them up?
When I was doing my research, I had to call the Dutch National Museum. It's called Naturalis or Naturalis, I don't know, the
Okay.
Dutch National Museum for Natural History. But as far as I know, they started to digitalize it in 2020. So you maybe have to write them, but I think they're digital now. The only problem would be, the bottleneck would be you have to learn Dutch, I think. But maybe it's digitalized in a very good way, so maybe you could use Google Translate or something.
That's interesting. I would definitely like to look at Did he write it about the culture of how people use kratom and what they used it for?
I only got one part of it, but in these parts that I read, he didn't mention how the people use it. I found these informations in other texts.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about that. I just wanted to know, like, the earliest use of kratom ever recorded. Was it in Thailand or Indonesia? Where was it, and what were people using it for? And how were they using it? Was it a tea, or were they chewing the leaves?
This is a very, very interesting question. I was asking myself the same thing, because as you may know, lots and lots of vendors are telling everybody, yeah, Thai people using it from the beginning of time, and it was used all the time. But there are very, very few sources for these claims. I believe so as well, don't get me wrong, but I never found much evidence to support this, but there is some. There was a recent paper which said that there was a documented use of kratom around the 1650s. Yeah. I am not sure. Maybe Pascal Tanguay was talking about this in the other episode on your podcast.
Yes,
I'm not
he was.
Sure. Yeah. That's when I heard about it. This is quite the earliest I have heard, but I have a theory why it could be still possible. You may heard that the word kratom is based on the Sanskrit word kadam, and this word kadam is usually used to refer to the laurel tree, which is called in Latin Lamarckia kadamba. This is a tree whose distribution extends from the Indian subcontinent through Southeast Asia to Australia. And at first glance, the tree looks almost like kratom, especially when you look at the yellow spherical flowers. They look not the same, but very, very similar to kratom. Mm-hmm. And the word kadam is also said to be the actual Indian name for Mitragina parvifolia, for the sister plant of Speciosa. And this plant, Mitragyna parvifolia, is considered sacred in Hinduism and is mentioned in a sacred text called Bhagavata Purana. It's translated as the ancient book of the Godhead. And I believe, since parvifolia and speciosa have a quite similar appearance and a comparable spectrum of effects, that the theory is very plausible that they used it from very early on, considering that the sacred texts are from 800 to 1000 before Christ.
Now, is this plant, is it like a Mitragyna genus plant? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Mitragyna parvifolia is it doesn't work exactly the same as Kratom does, but it has some of the same alkaloids. And in countries where Kratom is illegal, some people are using Mitragyna parvifolia as a substitute.
Is it ever sold by online, like legal herb type vendors?
Yeah, sure. At least in Europe. Yeah. I don't know how is it in North of America, but it is sold here together with 2 other species. Maybe you heard of Mitragyna hirsuta or Mitragyna inermis.
Yeah, I have. I've heard of that one. Now, what does that do? What are the differences and effects with all 3 of these plants?
I only ever tested inermis via bioassay. The others, I only friends told me that they used them because, as you may know, it is illegal in Switzerland. And people there told me it's like Kratom, but not that heavy. And it does give you more like a body high and not the psychological effects.
Okay.
But take this information with a grain of salt because I never took it myself, so I cannot tell you that.
And so you thought the one species was the one that was going back to in the Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavata Purana.
So this might have been the one from 1650 is what you're saying.
Yes, maybe it's Mitragyna speciosa as well, but my theory is that they didn't make any difference between the 2 trees.
Okay.
I think that's possible, at least.
Is it possible that people actually deliberately selected Kratom for its effects, or is it just something that grew naturally and that was always just harvested in the wild?
I could very well believe both things. Okay. I certainly think that you can select for a certain purpose, and I think people did it. You see, in Malaysia, Kratom was legal a very long time, until 2003, I think, or something. They had a very long time to select a certain strain, I think. And maybe they got back to Indonesia and Thailand as well. But it's an interesting question because there are lots of differences between Kratom from different countries. I'm sure you heard about it.
It is interesting, and especially since they legalized Kratom in Thailand now, and Thai Kratom may be available. Have you been following anything that's gone on in Thailand, and what's your impression of that?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's quite good for all the people there. I think the quasi-legalization is good, but I don't think the Thai government did it for the consumers. I think they did it because they want to have a share in the export. Indonesia is making big money, and I think Thailand wants to have a part of it. But it's okay for the users, I think. I think it's good for them. I hope they won't get back and forth. But as Pascal Tanguay said, if there's a more conservative government, it will take a step back, and then it will be a step forward if a more progressive government comes. So let's see.
I guess since we're on policy now, I just wanted to know what your impression of the WHO decision was. Do you think that will influence policy in Germany or Europe?
I think yes. I think it was a very good decision, and I followed it quite closely. Our friend Fabian Steinmetz was also there. I believe you have seen him as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, he was on the podcast.
Yeah, and he was as an expert on the ECDD hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a very good decision, very informed decision, but they still monitor Kratom. We have to keep that in mind. But I think it was a good decision, because if they had decided to schedule it it would be illegal everywhere. And I think it sends a positive signal to the governments in Europe. But yeah, we have to keep the weapons up, so to say.
I know you were talking about maybe like a European Kratom Association. Has there been any progress on that, or is there any activity around Kratom policy in Germany or Europe?
Yes, I once was involved with creating an European Kratom Association. It didn't work very well at the beginning, so it went quiet for some time. But now another thing is evolving called the European Kratom Alliance. I think this is very, very interesting for your listeners. So first of all, I'm not a real member, so there's no formal contract between me and the European Kratom Alliance. But I'm like an ambassador or messenger for this thing. It's an alliance between lots of European Kratom vendors and some activists, which are trying to lobby the European Union to keep Kratom legal in the countries where it's legal right now, and to make it legal where it is illegal right now. As far as I know, there's quite a bit of money behind that. And it looks and sounds very good, what I already heard.
That sounds really good. And we do have a kratomscience.eu page, and we have a couple of guys from Portugal writing. They're translating a lot of our articles into Spanish. And
you can contact them via contact@eka.eu.
Okay, great. I definitely will. I wouldn't mind having somebody from there on the show too to talk about it. In general, do you see Kratom a lot in Germany? Like maybe in Marburg, is there a shop that sells it? And how do most people buy their Tom there?
I think I've never seen Kratom in a regular shop ever. If you buy Kratom in Germany, you almost every time buy it via mail, via web page. I mean, You order it online, and we have quite a lot of shops, and it works very well. You have lots and lots of different vendors with different products. I can't complain, I think.
So what about some of the other early explorers? Did they have any writings about the use of kratom? Maybe descriptions about how it was prepared, or maybe the effects that they noticed that it might have had on consumers?
Yeah, for example, Leonard Ray in 1907, he wrote extensively about the use of kratom as a powder, not just by chewing, but as a powder, and about smoking kratom in form of madat. That's a very thick paste of kratom extract with a little bit of like a burning agent to make it burn better in an opium pipe.
So there actually was smoking of it. That's interesting, but it's not the same thing as the powder. It's not like somebody just had kratom, dried leaves, and put it in a powder. And you have a description of a paste in your book. Is that kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I try to be as close to this historical description as possible, and to see if you really can make a paste, and to see if you really can smoke it, if you're able to smoke it. Because lots of people are telling me that you cannot smoke kratom. And I said, okay, well, I try to make it and see what happens.
What happened? Did it work?
Yeah, I made that paste, that stuff. I smoked it in a reimagined opium pipe thing, and yes, it worked. I did that bioassay. Some friends came over. We tried it together, and it worked. But I cannot recommend doing it because I think it's a waste of kratom because it's not that strong.
Are the effects similar as like a tea? Because I imagine, with different method of administration, then, some of the alkaloids probably burn up in the pipe. Some of them get through.
It's almost like drinking a tea, but the effects are immediate. And I had a little bit of headaches, 2 of my friends as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's... You see, all of it is anecdotal, so yeah, I cannot recommend it. It was like drinking a very weak tea, immediate effects and a little bit of nausea, a little bit of headache.
You also have like some other things in here, like fruit juice, some gummies, I think, and there is a description about tea, and I can tell this because there are pictures. I was going to ask, now you had some tips as well about the use of kratom, and I just wondering if you would like to like go through those.
These are maybe not exhaustive. I think these tips are working quite well. So first of all, I'm a friend of set, setting, and dose, like with classic psychedelics. So don't take it when you're not in a okay mood. Don't take it to push away bad feelings. And we're speaking about hedonistic use, right? Setting must be taken care of. So don't take it when you're driving a car. Don't take it when you have to work with heavy machines, and don't take it when to push away bad feelings and stuff. If you're not familiar with your vendor, it's always possible to heat your kratom up, either bake it for 10 minutes in an oven, or just prepare a hot tea. It usually is enough to kill like germs.
And this is like contaminants, like maybe if there's like salmonella, maybe in some dirty kratom. If you heat it up, just like if you cook chicken, then that'll kill some of the contaminants. It might not do anything about large amounts of heavy metals, but yeah, I've heard that as well. If you make a tea, you should be fine.
Yeah, but I also have to say I never heard about somebody getting salmonella from kratom. This is purely
that's very rare.
Taking extra care. So I never heard about it.
They have discovered salmonella in supplies of kratom, but it's just kind of like any other vegetable that goes through warehouses. And actually, the drying process, we know that sometimes it's dried outdoors. There's not a lot of regulation on that, and then like a lizard might pass over it, shit on it. That's how the salmonella probably gets into it, but it's not an epidemic level problem though. So do you have any is that all the tips? Do you have any more?
Yeah, maybe the best tips of all, stay hydrated. Most of the bad effects of kratom are coming not from a kratom itself, but from being dehydrated. So try to drink a lot so you can avoid having headaches or nausea or something. Another tip would be buying lab-proof kratom. I think it's a thing in North America as well. We have some vendors which are testing kratom to check if there are heavy metals or pesticides in it. I think that's very useful. If you intend to take kratom, don't gamble. Just buy pure stuff.
What about drug-drug interactions? I personally don't take kratom anywhere near drinking any alcohol because it just doesn't make me feel good, and it just cancels the other one out. What do you think about this idea of drug-drug interactions? Because there's reports of, they call them kratom-related deaths, but it's mostly the person had fentanyl in their system. I think it was in Sweden maybe, where they had the odesmethyltramadol in their system. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, as you already said, I don't think there have been any kratom-related deaths without drug-drug interactions. At least I'm not aware of them. I don't think that kratom can kill you that easily. All these deaths were mostly fentanyl deaths. I took a very, very careful look about all these death reports. Maybe you've seen it on my Twitter page. I pinned it because it's very important. I would say don't take other drugs if you're taking kratom. I heard lots of people taking other pain medication while taking kratom, and cool if it works, but I won't propose doing that. Because we don't have clinical studies about it, and all the drug deaths we know about are drug-drug interaction deaths and not kratom deaths. So especially don't take other opiates. That's very, very, very important. Also, stuff like DXM or allergic medication. Is there a good name for it in English? I don't know.
I would say maybe antihistamine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is a group of drugs I also encountered a lot of times when looking at these cases, and benzodiazepines.
Okay.
I wouldn't take them with kratom as well. I've written an article recently in Lucy's magazine. Unfortunately, it's in German as well, about drug-drug interactions. I will send it over to you. Maybe you can take a look at it. In this paper, I propose why there are drug-drug interactions with kratom. I think it's mostly because of the cytochrome P55 system. Have you ever heard about it?
Yes. Now you're talking about an enzyme, and I had this written down to ask you about. Is it shortened to CYP450? It's an enzyme, and some people have a different system than others. So yeah, please talk about that.
The first thing you said, some people have other systems. You call them ultra rapid or poor metabolizer.
Okay.
These are a little bit a different thing. There were some cases with kratom and liver toxicity. And the theory is that these persons are poor metabolizers, and this caused the liver damage. Because usually you don't have a liver damage if you take kratom, but maybe this is just a theory at the moment. These have a slightly different cytochrome system. But we all have this kind of system. And these are enzymes. If you take any medicine, these are the hormones which take it away. You know what I mean?
It metabolizes it.
Yes. That was the word I was looking for. Yeah. They metabolize it. It's CYP2D6 and CYP3A4. These are very important for metabolizing pharmaceuticals and also kratom. So if you take one drug and another drug which is metabolized by the system, you can overstimulate your system. You know what I mean?
Basically, your liver can only process so much. Your liver has a metabolizing processing power. If you put too many drugs in it at once, then it kind of shuts down, and that's when toxicity happens. So is that the basic idea? That's
the basic idea. And if there are any pharmacologists in the audience, I apologize. Please don't behead me. I could explain it better in German.
How this came up was this Cleveland Clinic on their blog. Now, Cleveland Clinic is like a big medical healthcare giant in the United States. Their headquarters is in Cleveland, but they're all over the place. And they published this blog post that said kratom has even caused deaths. It literally said that. It didn't say kratom-related deaths. It said kratom has caused death, which is a pretty big medical statement. He did a Twitter thread. You asked for sources for this claim. This guy sent 14 studies. None of the studies whatsoever had a death that occurred with kratom alone. The person either had fentanyl in their system, and Dirk did a pretty good breakdown of every single study. Like, I guess my question is, have you ever seen a death in any of these studies that was caused by kratom alone? Maybe like a very big amount, like a water intoxication level kratom death?
Not that I am aware of. Mm-hmm. Let's take it. I'm already looking at this Twitter thread. Looking all over it. I think there was one which was maybe just with kratom, but I don't think so. I think there was one case report where the guy already had bottles of other medicines and lots of bottles of medicines laying around him when they found him dead, I think. So it's safe to assume that he has taken lots of other stuff, because there's no clinical evidence that kratom has caused death.
There's a history of safe use in Thailand, even though I think people now are taking more of it that's causing other problems. I think there may be one or two out there where somebody took a toxic amount of extracts, but it's on the level of, like, I heard of a guy that just as a goof ate nothing but licorice for 3 weeks and he died. So basically from probably sugar intoxication or something like that. So there might be a couple instances like that. What do you think? I don't know how it works in Germany or Europe, but here sometimes we have coroners, like medical examiners that examine deaths, that are elected to their positions. So first of all, they're not qualified. Even if they are qualified, they work on a deadline, and they're telling some people that, we found mitragynine in this person's system when he died, therefore that's what caused the death. What do you think of that? And to me, it just exacerbates the problem, because there's families out there that say, my husband, my son died of kratom. There's even a lawsuit in Philadelphia that's going on right now, of parents suing a kratom company because their son died. He had a seizure, and he died in a car accident. So what do you think of all that as far as medical examiners? Because I think it happens across the board with other drugs. And the news media will pick it up and say, this scary new drug is killing people. I just want to get your impression of all that.
We don't have the system, like we don't elect coroners or something. I find it very weird, to be frank. I think the coroners or medical examiners in Germany are working very good.
Yeah.
At least I haven't heard any other thing. But to be clear, we have the same media that pushes the narrative of this strange new drug is killing kids and something.
Yeah.
We already had it with Salvia divinorum some years ago. I think, and to be clear, every drug can kill you, even kratom if you take enough of it.
Yes.
But we have to look about what are the usual doses people are taking, and is it possible? I mean, okay, maybe you die if you eat 1 or 2 kilograms of kratom powder. Good luck by trying this out. It's not happening, but you know what I mean. Maybe you can die, but we have to look to what dosages are people taking. And I think even if somebody dies, it's not the fault of the drug; it's the fault of the prohibition, or the failure to communicate how to take drugs safely. And this is a problem in America. This is a problem in Europe. We have this thinking, don't tell kids about drugs, and they won't take drugs. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very, very, very harmful to youth, because if we tell them to take it in a safe manner, we don't have any deaths. Because if we begin to label substances as bad substances, we also have to forbid the usage of caffeine, for example. Mm-hmm. If you go in a German pharmacy, you can buy these caffeine tablets, pills to just keep you awake and stuff. If you eat enough of them, you can die, but you can buy it over the counter, more or less.
And not very many either. Caffeine will kill you faster than mitragynine.
Or salt, or you name it. Yeah, I think education is better than prohibition. Yeah, I guess that's my statement in short.
Cannabis is still prohibited in many of the countries in the European Union. I mean, even people talk about the Netherlands, even it's just decriminalized there. Do you know about this group that Dr. Steinmetz is in, the European Coalition for Just and Effective Drug Policies? Are you involved in any of that? And just what's your impression about, in general, the drug policies in Germany and Europe?
I am not involved in any of these organizations, but I like NCOT very, very much, and I'm planning to join them sometime in the future. I think the drug policies in Germany especially are going to be a lot different if we're lucky, because as you may know, the new government of Germany said that they want to legalize marijuana, like cannabis, I mean. And I think this will be the gateway. This could be the gateway to a better drug policy, first in Germany. But I think if Germany really legalizes cannabis for recreational purposes, there is a very good chance that other countries in Europe will follow, especially because Portugal is taking these steps since decades. Mm-hmm. And they have no problems at all. And Germany has a great influence in Europe, so I hope they can influence European politics. But still, I'm curious how they will make it, because we have still these single convention and on narcotic drugs and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's not really. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how you can legalize something but still be in the single convention. So let's see how they will sort this out. But fortunately, Kratom is not in the single convention, so that's also very good.
Claude Rifat or Rifat, he wrote a lot of stuff on the internet. I'm just wondering about, there's even a plant now called the Rifat Kratom. I think it's an actual strain. I don't know if it's a strain literally, but he developed a kratom tree that you can buy, Rifat kratom trees. And I'm just wondering if you want to talk about him a little bit and his work with Kratom.
Claude Rifat, or Rifat, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think he died 20 years ago already.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah, he died in 2002. He was a French biologist and psychonaut. And I think you could also name him an underground researcher. He did write a lot about GHB, I think, and also about other drugs. And he is credited with bringing the first live material of Kratom out of Thailand. You know, when Kratom was still illegal in Thailand, he went there and he took some leaves with him and brought it to other parts of the world. I think also to Australia, because it was at that time it was still illegal in Australia. And I think most of the strains that we have right now in Europe and in North America are Rifat strain. Don't nail me down on this, but I think he was the one who brought live material to the Western world, and we still have it today. Yeah, I just wanted to tell the audience, take a look at shamanaustralis.com. Just Google Shaman Australis Claude Rifat and take a look. I think there's an archived page about him or from him. It looks like a little bit like the homepage of Terence McKenna. There are lots of really, really weird but really, really good essays about drug use, I think.
Yeah,
just as a side note.
Yes, I have seen that. I'll put the link in the description, but I have seen that, and yeah, he's definitely akin to Terence McKenna, where he goes into a lot of visions and he kind of fictionalizes it a little bit, and it's really interesting. He was a really interesting guy. Part of your book is growing kratom, which I'm trying to grow a kratom tree. I have my friend Soren Shade. He's in West Virginia, and he has a greenhouse where he's growing kratom for his company, and he brought me a cutting. And since he brought me the cutting, I put it in a bigger pot, and the thing has not grown. It's dormant, but it's still healthy, but it won't produce any more leaves. I think it had some transplant shock, and it's a little cool in the house. We don't keep the house above 70 in the winter just for energy saving purposes. You were talking about growing kratom. I was just wondering if you do grow kratom in Germany. I live in Pittsburgh, so that's pretty much a similar climate to Germany. I think our growing region is 7B maybe, or 7A. Yeah, we definitely couldn't keep a kratom tree outside in the winter and have it survive. Do you have any just general tips for growing kratom?
Be in a very, very tropical climate is the best tip.
Yes.
No, I was joking. So if you can be in a nice
move to
tropical
Florida.
climate, but yes, be in Florida or be in southern France or Italy or something. I'm growing them still. I'm growing them just as an ornamental plant. I couldn't take leaves from it. There are maybe 50 leaves on the plant, and it's not growing very fast because we don't have that much light. I think maybe one could try to use LED lights like one you would use when he or she is growing cannabis.
Yeah. I'm about to order some.
Very sure you need more light and maybe a heating in winter.
Are you working on maybe a new book or just any project you're working on for your doctorate that you like to talk about?
Yeah, I still keep up with the Kratom news, of course.
Yeah.
I looking forward to the European Kratom Alliance. I hope that they told me they want to start at the beginning of next year, and also to start acquiring new members and everything. I'm very much looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm trying to start a YouTube channel with video essays about drug myths and drug culture.
Oh, great. Do you have the channel?
I haven't started it yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm rendering the first 3 videos at the moment, so I wanted to have some episodes in the back so I can keep a schedule. But I will promote it on my Twitter page. So if anybody is interested, I will most definitely have 1 or 2 episodes about Kratom, but also about other drug-related stuff. Follow me if you're interested. One last thing, don't always take my word for it. If you have any questions about drug-drug interactions or your body or something, ask a doctor and physician and toxicologist. Just make sure if you do something to your body, take an informed decision.
Thank you, Dirk Netter. Follow him on Twitter at Dirk Netter. Follow us at Kratom Science. Like our Facebook page. Please share this podcast. Like, subscribe, comment, rate, review. The music is Risey. The song is called Memories of Thailand. The Kratom Science Podcast is written and produced by me, Brian Gallagher, for KratomScience.com. Take care.